In this video, I will be discussing about angles formed by tangents and secants. So for our objectives, we have first, determine the relationships formed by tangent and secant lines. Second, identify angles formed by secants and tangents. And third, state the theorems formed by the intersection of tangent and secants. For the definition, secant. A secant is a line that intersects a circle in two distinct points. A secant determines a chord, and the chord determines a secant. So in this illustration, AB is called a secant line. Point A and B are points of intersection between the secant and the circle. After knowing the definition of secant, let us have a short drill. So you are going to determine whether the given line is a tangent or a secant. For the first one, given this line sub 1, is line sub 1 a tangent or secant line? Number 2, is GF a tangent or a secant? Number 3, is FB a tangent or a secant? And number 4, is QR a tangent or a secant? Let's now move on to the theorems and postulates on tangent and secant lines, part 1. The first one is the tangent secant on the circle intercepted arc theorem. The measure of the angles formed by the intersection of a tangent and a secant on the circle is half the measure of its intercepted arc. Given this illustration, in the circle C, if secant BW intersect tangent XY at W, then the measure of this angle BWX is just 1/2 of the measure of its intercepted arc, which is this arc BW. So for example, given again this illustration, if the measure of this intercepted arc BW is 120 degrees, then the measure of this angle BWX is 60 degrees, since it's just 1/2 of its intercepted arc, which is BW. Next is the angles formed by two tangents theorem. The measure of an angle formed by the intersection of two tangents on the exterior of the circle is equal to half the difference of the measures of the major and minor arcs. Given this illustration, if XH and XG are tangents to circle O and intersect at an exterior point X, then the measure of this angle X is just 1/2 of this major arc G if H minus the minor arc G H. For example, using this figure, the measure of angle X is 1/2 the major arc G if H, which measures 215, minus the minor arc GH, which measures 145 degrees. So that is, measure of angle X is equal to 1/2 of 215 minus 145 degrees, which is equal to 35 degrees. Next, angles formed by tangent-secant exterior point theorem. The measure of an angle formed by the intersection of a secant and a tangent on the exterior of the circle is half the difference of the measure of their intersected arcs. So given this illustration, in circle O, if tangent xg and secant xf intersect at an exterior point x, then this angle x is just 1/2 of their intercepted arc, which are gf minus gh. So for example, using this illustration, the measure of this angle x is just equal to 1/2 of this fg, which is 115 degrees, minus this intercepted arc GH, which measures 81 degrees. So that's 1/2 times the quantity of 115 degrees minus 81 degrees, and that is 17 degrees. The measure of angle X here is 17 degrees. Knowing the first three theorems and postulates on tangents and secants, you are now ready to answer Activity 14, Tangents and Secants 1. Let's now move on to the theorems and postulates on tangent and secant lines, part 2. The first one is angles formed by two secants interior point theorem. The measure of an angle formed by two secants intersecting in the interior of the circle is equal to half the sum of the measures of the arcs intercepted by the angles and the angle vertical to it. In this figure, in circle O, if fx and gy are secants intersecting in the exterior of the circle, which is h, then the measure of angle GHX and the measure of angle FHY is just 1/2 the sum of this arc FY plus the measure of this arc GX. So for example, using again this illustration, if fx and gy are secants intersecting in the interior circle, and if arc fy is 120 degrees, and the measure of this arc gx is 78 degrees, find the measure of angle GHX and the measure of angle FHY. So that is, the angle GHX hx in the angle FHY is 1/2 the sum of this arc FY, which is 120, plus the measure of this arc GX, which is 78. So this angle GHX and angle FHY is 1/2 the sum of 120 degrees or the arc FY plus 78 degrees or the arc GX, which is equal to 99 degrees. We also have angles formed by two secants exterior point theorem. The measure of an angle formed by two secants intersecting at the exterior of the circle is equal to half the difference of the measures of their intercepted arcs. So given this illustration, in circle O, if LJ and LA are secants intersecting at the exterior point L, then the measure of this angle L is 1/2 the measure of this intercepted arc JA and UI. So for example, if the measure of this intercepted arc JA is 97 degrees and this intercepted arc UI is 23 degrees, the measure of this angle L is 1/2 the difference of this intercepted arc JA, which is 97 degrees, minus UI, which is 23 degrees, and that is 37 degrees. Knowing again the second part of the theorems and postulates on tangents and secants, you can now answer Activity 15, Tangents and Secants 2.